Thanks, Doc. Anyway, I put this story in the April Avalanche Review, and it fits right in with all of these. It actually made me feel really good to see some of my peers and mentors up there telling stories about how they screwed up. And when Carl got up there and gave a couple of the oh my gods, that made me feel quite a bit better, actually. So here we are. This is last year, January, and you might have heard about this. And this is on the way up, checking out, seeing if there was a little wind slab. And I'll go through a little weather history for you to start off with. And you don't really need to know any of this part, except that it's November and it snowed. Okay? Good enough? Great. And so here we are, early November, and this is just an example of a snow pit from the Bridger Teton Avalanche Forecast Center. It snowed, and then it got cold, and it didn't snow very much after that. And I'll see if I can make these things work. Okay, November 16th, 13. Whoa. Yeah. So that was me and Sarah Carpenter up there going to do our sort of traditional early season, let's go investigate what's the bottom of our snowpack looked like. You remember that, Rod? What did the bottom of our snowpack look like?
There was some facets.
There were some facets, yeah. Yeah, there were quite a bit of facets. There's the pit from the previous slide. Yeah, our layer of concern certainly was there. And late November, did it get any better? You guys were up here. Did it get any better for you? No. It got worse. And so early December, it really didn't. There's a lot of squares in the bottom of that pit. There's actually a lot of squares all the way through that pit. So, boy, it's kind of dark. The thing that I want to point out here, as you can see it pretty well in mid-December, is that we had a really nice cocktail of near-surface facets with surface hoar on the top of it. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, and they were fairly big surface hoar. And it was kind of ugly. And... all right, so where are we? Well, here we are in December, and you can see that we just got little piddles of snow here. If any of you guys know Bill Nally from the UDOT, this is his graphic format. I really like it. I like the color in it. And so we had no snow, and then you can see over here that our low temps, there's a -7, there's like a 0, there's a 7, there's a, is that a 0, I think? But no, there's a 1 and a -1. Anyway, the bottom dropped out, temperature-wise. And a lot of this temperature is up at the top of the tram. And so what were we having going on there? If that's the temps at the top of the tram, what were the temps low down in the valleys? I feel like I'm teaching an avalanche class. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, it was colder. It was super inverted. And we had this incredible layer of surface hoar right at the bathtub ring. So, I was definitely concerned about that. And then you can see here this storm, this New Year's storm. Remember that one, Kiefer? Yeah, the New Year's storm, and I'll show you some pictures of the New Year's storm here. And some stuff at the village pulled out. Oh, another one from the BT. And it fell on top of this surface hoar layer. And here's a picture from Teton AT that I thought was a little bit ironic and somewhat prescient. And this is Romeo coming up Wimpy's and triggering, you can't really see very well, the crown here and the crown here. And he triggered both of these remotely by coming right up that ridge line. So things were touchy right there at New Year's. Yeah, there were these collapses that resounded just basin wide. I actually pulled the plug on some ski guiding clients on New Year's Eve. I said, you know, guys, I can't take you out because I can't guarantee your safety. So I'd never done that before, but it made me sweat. And so I took them out the next day, and I was like, okay, go exactly where I say. But yeah, things were very touchy. And so here's a few more from the early January avalanche cycle. The interesting thing here is that they were very much going on this surface hoar. Now, surface hoar was pretty well preserved, and the distribution was super wide. So, all right, and now we're getting into January, which is a different color scheme altogether. And so we've still got this lingering problem from the New Year's storm, and it starts to abate a little bit. And then you can see right here, January 18th through 20th. And we end up getting right about 4 inches of water. So in that one storm. I see you guys' heads going, this is predictable. Exactly. And so, okay, I don't know if this one's going to play. I couldn't get this to play earlier. Help. Nah, we'll just leave it go. But, yeah, so all ECTPs, all quality ones, although on a 28-degree slope, I don't know if you'd call it a quality one, but an ECTP and big collapses stepping out of the pit. So, and once again, from a friend of mine's pit book working on level 1, there's that surface hoar on top of a big faceted layer. So, and we come back to this. We're looking a little deeper into this January 18th through 20th storm. And here's a few of Jamie's pictures, actually. They did, the road was closed, Teton Pass was closed for a couple of days, and they did a heli bombing mission. And so these are the beaver slides over on the west side. This is from, this is Glory Bowl, a really common place that it goes right below the cliff bands. And then you guys will see I have a secret fascination with pictures of large equipment. So there's some of those pictures. I guess it's not secret anymore. But a couple of my pictures that are really just up here to remind me to tell you that a lot of that cycle from the 18th and 20th, you know, aside from the things that went big from explosives, they went on that surface hoar layer. And they went like down here in these pockets. They didn't go up here on the bigger bowls, Windy Ridge and Super Bowl. They went in these, maybe you can see that little pocket. That's not a normal place, you know, southwest winds on a weak layer. I've never seen that go in 32 years of skiing Teton Pass. But it was definitely interesting. So little pockets of surface hoar, you'd be skiing through the trees, and all of a sudden you'd go bump and ski over a crown down in, you know, the big wide open trees. So super interesting. And so, you know, what are our problems there? You know, it's pretty straightforward. We've got a couple of persistent weak layers with 4 inches of water on top of it, and it's going to run from persistent, that's taken from you guys, the persistent weak layer, which I actually like better, but the persistent slab and the deep slab problem. And then on January 24th, after it had cleared a little bit, we got another 5 inches of snow. We got, maybe a third of an inch of water, and with a good bit of wind from the southwest. So we got a little bit of wind slab in there. So I'm trying to bring this together. Okay. And so here's the before. This is the south face of Mount Taylor, the east face right there. This is taken right off the road. Any of you guys that have driven west over Teton Pass have looked at this face. And that morning, I picked up my 2 friends south of Victor, and they're both, John Fitzgerald is the newest forecaster up in the Chugach. Another guy, Trevor Dayton, I taught Abby forecasting with for a number of years. I said, where are we going to go? And I said, Lynne always goes to the male cabin trees. And Fitz, who had been teaching this level 1, during this storm cycle, he puts his foot down. He said, absolutely not. That's where the problem is concentrated. He said, the problem is really this slab on top of the surface hoar. He said, I think we should go up high where it was inverted and where that surface hoar got burned off. And I'm like, okay, I've been out a little bit, but, I tend to agree with you. I remember how warm it was. It was 20 degrees and kind of sun softened up top. I'm like, sure, I can buy that argument. So we traipsed up the southeast ridge here, and we did a bunch of hand shears, and you could definitely see the snowpack change as we got up in here. There's definitely some rot underneath. As Rod said, those facets don't just go away. And the funny thing, kind of ironic thing, is that I was planning the April issue of Tar at the time, and we're talking about risk tolerance. And we're talking about personal risk tolerance and talking about professional risk tolerance. And all three of us agreed. We're like, this is just within my personal risk tolerance going up here on a day like today, and it's way outside of my professional risk tolerance. I don't care how good a skier my clients might be. So it was just an interesting, somewhat ironic conversation. And so we get up top here. It was still pretty early. The sun hadn't come around the corner yet. And we ski a run right here in what's called the left barrel. And right about here, where the slope angle starts to change, we go zit and come back over to the up track. Trevor decides he has to leave. He's got stuff to do. And Fitz and I note, wow, the snow quality is really changing here as the sun has come around. It's starting to slab up a little bit, starting to get a little warm, starting to be a little bit sun affected. And so we head up. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's a group of 3 up above us. And they were over here, and they were skiing this line. They'd put one track in, they were ahead of us, come over and gone back up again. You guys would have laughed because we were trying to behave. We were trying to be professional, instead of saying idiots, assholes, because they were actually our friends and our peers. We said, that's outside my risk tolerance. We're trying to use grown-up language. Outside my risk tolerance. And so they had already headed up and were parked up here getting ready for their second run, and Fitz and I decided our second run, we didn't trust the sun, we still didn't really trust the snowpack, so our second run is in this sort of semi-low angle 30-ish, like glade to bench, and we come over here, cut over here, ski some of these glades and down, and we're about right in here. And it's getting a little thinner, and Fitz says to me, "Oh, look at that moose!" And sometimes, sometimes I'm like, "What? Moose? I don't see a moose." And he's like, "Here, come about 3 steps towards me." And I take like 3 steps, and I'm looking over here, and all of a sudden I see the moose. I'm like, "Oh, the moose!" Have a little natural history moment. And the next thing is, I almost feel this collapse like a rifle shot, like a big crack. Feel it in your belly, feel it in your bowels, the whole bottom drops out. And I stand there and I'm like, reach out to grab Fitz, like, what the? And we turn around, and this entire poop chute right here is full of these layers of roiling cloud. And it's in waves, layer after layer after layer. And we were like, oh shit. Because I knew that those 3 people had still been up above us. And so we waited for those clouds to go away, and we zipped back over here to the ridge, back down the up track, and back down to the main Coal Creek path. So we hit the Coal Creek path, we look up, we see mounds of debris, we look down, I'll show you pictures in a minute, and we see where the debris had rocketed, rolled up the side of the drainage, and then turned around and gone down for another half mile. So it was interesting, and this is, I guess it speaks to years of training of teaching avalanche classes and practicing rescue scenarios, as we kind of look at each other and we sort of just drop into work. Like, all right, we're going to signal search, and we just get to it. And right about that time, the person who had triggered this thing comes flying down to where we are and says everybody who had been up there on that ridge is clear, is safe. Which is a damn good thing, because I'd not want to go back up and do a signal search on that mound of debris. And so Fitz and I do, in echelon, a signal search down the debris, sort of waiting for things to clear. I'd called Teton County Search and Rescue. And so, here's a little picture just to kind of get you tuned in to the terrain. So there's the up track right there. And this whole thing, it pulled out from the trees, not just this face where you could see, but all the way down the side of this south ridge. And you can't quite see it, but you can see the extent of the crown. And now here's kind of a bow to Randy, is that the crown comes down and the flank is right here, and it takes out our bottom two turns. So, and this is a conversation I had with Carl in the email, were we good or were we lucky? I don't really know the answer to that. We got pretty dang close to the line. So, but I'll go through some of that here in a minute. Were we good or were we lucky? We were happy we didn't trigger it. But the person who had been up here, he had tried to trigger this thing. He had thought he was dealing with a wind slab problem. Just with a little bit of wind coming across this south ridge, and he was just trying to see if he could get that to clean out right there. And he got too close to a rock, and he was able to touch the deep slab problem underneath. So I went up a couple days later. I really couldn't get anything to move. And this was pretty high up in there, similar aspect to where we had skied. And there's actually a little melt freeze crust on top of that depth hoar. Here's just a few of the pictures of the debris. And it came down in a number of waves. It came down in some dry waves and then in two wet waves. And this one, we watched it. Fitz and I watched it ooze down till it stopped right here. So, super interesting. We did a signal search, and the bottom part of that, I don't know if you guys know about this or not, but it's one of the more traveled out tracks in the Tetons. It's called Coal Creek, and it's an exit from a pretty safe ski spot. So, yeah, we were pretty lucky as a community that no one was involved in it. But Teton County Search and Rescue, they pulled in one of their helicopters and they got in. You can't see it really well. It's hanging off the bottom of the heli right there. But they brought in their analog signal searcher. Is that what they call it, Nick? Close enough. And they went up and down the lower and the upper debris, and nobody was caught, which is amazing because there's people down that thing almost every hour of the day. So here's some thoughts, and I guess my first thoughts are to know your problem. And I really am pleased with how avalanche education is going these days. Us talking about what's the problem, how detectable is the problem, how manageable is the problem. And I think when Greg thought he was dealing with a wind slab problem, wind slabs are detectable. Wind slabs, unless they're really big, hard slabs, are manageable. But he was mistaken. He got it wrong. He was affecting the deep slab problem. And as we all know, they're very difficult to detect and they're impossible to manage. And he got lucky on that one, that he was able to self-arrest on the bed surface and not get taken. And so, so that's, to echo some things you've already heard, is to choose a control technique that fits your problem. Okay, and then this is, I was pretty excited to see us repeating, our various themes, is that many pros underestimate the size of the problem. So I've seen that from a number of people today. So it's going to come out less manageable than you think. So, and here's some other thoughts. I don't know if you guys know this. You would have had to be living in a hole not to know what was going on in Jackson at the time. But this exploded. This exploded in the internet. This exploded on Teton AT. It got kind of ugly, actually. And there were a lot of people really angry with Greg. There were a lot of people that were really defending his right to be up there and doing that. But it brought this conversation very much to a head. There wasn't a ton of resolution, but it was ugly. And people were weighing in on Facebook, weighing in on Teton AT, without really knowing what they were talking about. And so I guess my plea to you guys as pros is to spread the word, to try to get people to think before they write, to gather information before making judgments. But then at the same time, I'm challenging us as a community, professionals and recreationists, to call yourself. Did you make the right call, or did you get away with it? And I'm here saying I think Trevor and Fitz and I cut it a little bit too close to the line there. We got away with that one. And so it gives me a little bit of oomph to stand up here and say this. Sure. And I've heard quite a bit of talk today about, from Rod, how important the snowy torrents are or were to us. And I'd really like to see those come out again, whether it's electronic or in print. And I really applaud every avalanche center that investigates accidents. So I wish ours did a little better job, because I think that there's a lot to be learned from that, and I think you do a really good job with that, and you can do great jobs with that without pointing fingers, and I think that's part of our continuing education, is to take a good hard look at what it was we've done. And just because you can post up about it right away doesn't mean you ought to. So, yeah. And so, I take advantage of this picture from Jerry to just give this weight to it of its own about wind stability is the question, that good terrain choice is the answer. The route that the shot that we chose to ski that day had one rollover of 34 degrees in it. So, maybe we did get lucky, but that was the best choice that we made of the entire day. And now this cracks me up, because this is the third time that you'll see this. And I guess I don't have to say too much about it, because you've seen it a lot. And I think there's a lot of validity to it, to having good rituals here. So thanks to Trimper for this particular graphic. So, and then this is something I've been thinking about, and I put this in tar. I inflict this upon you guys in tar, because I actually think it's a pretty important topic as our backcountry, front country, side country, whatever you want to call it, as we get more and more backcountry travelers out there. We have to pay attention. We're not just Edward Abbey out there in the wilderness doing our own thing. You know, we are part of this social contract. And I don't know if any of you guys were at our Snow King Avalanche Night, our preseason thing down in Jackson, but Drew Hardesty came up and gave a pretty powerful presentation about the social contract. You know, about paying attention to those who are both above you and below you. So, displaying situational awareness, using good citizenship. The best tool that we have out there really is, well, situational awareness, but it's communication. You know, and I've actually noticed that, you know, people can be kind of dicks around the Tetons. Yeah, really. Especially to girls. Oh, it pisses me off. Women. So, you know, I try and do the nice guidely thing, like, where are you going so that I don't end up underneath you? Oh, I get some major attitude. But it's gotten a little bit better since last spring. You know, people are like, well, we're going up into Garnet and we're thinking about going into the Hourglass. You know, a little bit less attitude. Just that communication. At least the somewhat human elements. So, and there are some legal issues. There's a great article in the February TAR by Rich Mrazek, who's the chairman of the board of the Friends of the UAC, and he goes into it quite in depth, but the use of reasonable care on both sides. So if you're the plaintiff and you're found to have at least a 50% responsibility in the accident, then you don't get any money. And so that's what he calls, I really liked it, the moron on the skin track rule. So don't be the moron on the skin track, but also don't be the moron up above, just jumping out into the shot because you were there first. And so I really think that this is part of our responsibility as professionals and forecasters, is to promulgate this social contract and this awareness. So that's another thing that I won't say I changed my practices because of this particular incident, but I think that as a community, at least as a Teton community, awareness has been heightened. So, anyway, just a few things that came from a big incident on Mount Taylor last year, some things that I learned. Thanks, you guys.